Hey everybody, this is Zach Comer, owner of Asheville Medical Massage and High Performance Aging. I'm here today with Whitney Madden. Whitney is a brain health expert. She is the owner of BrainWise Acupuncturists. She has been an acupuncturist for over 20 years and is also a certified brain health coach through the Amen Clinics. And today she's going to be talking to us about how to interpret the results of the brain health assessment that you've taken online. So welcome, Whitney.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here. I think the brain health assessment is a fabulous tool. And I think as you start to look at your results, that you will find it can actually be a really good tool for perhaps your family members and children to take it as well to help to understand how their brain processes things. So a little bit of general information. So Dr. Amen, who developed this assessment, has looked at, I think at this point, 160,000 brains throughout the world. He's got the largest brain database with SPECT scans in the world. And he has figured out quite a few things of how our brain works and the different parts that work, and when something gets off balance, what we need to do to bring it back into balance. So the really exciting thing is that there's many ways that we can bring our brain back into balance. So the first is awareness and understanding what it is. The second is that he gives in terms of recommendation are supplements, and those are not needed all the time, but if somebody needs some extra support, I think those are great recommendations. And then he also talks about different types of exercise for different types of brain types. And then he also talks about diet, just in some general information will be on your assessment that is there. So a couple things that he says, he suggests across the board that I, after being in practice for 20 years, that I agree strongly with. One is that he thinks that everybody should be on a really good multivitamin and multimineral supplement, because as much as we, especially in this area, we tend to eat more healthy than the general population, but no matter how healthy we eat, the soil is not as rich in nutrients as we want it to be, even if we are eating organic. And so we are missing minerals and vitamins that we are actually needing. There was a time in my practice where I really didn't think people needed that if they could eat well enough. But what I have found over the years is that we really do need to supplement with a good whole food supplement, or Dr. Amen has, his brain and body power multivitamin and mineral supplement. He also suggests a pro-brain biotic, which is basically to help support the gut in order to support the brain. There is a very strong correlation between the brain and the gut, and making sure that the gut is happy will make sure that the brain is operating as best to its ability. And then the other thing is exercise wise, he says across the board, suggestion is to walk like you're late to a meeting, 45 minutes a day, 4 times a week, and then some sort of weight resistance training at least twice a week. And those are the supplements and the exercise, those are general for everybody. One other thing that I will say about the supplements is to always get, every year that you get blood work done, I highly, highly recommend for you to get a vitamin D level check. And what you are looking for is the range, the lab range says that normal is between 30 to 80 units. And a lot of people in Western medicine, Western doctors will say, oh, if you're in the 30, 35 range, you're fine. Well, with a range that large, you really want to be in the 60 to 80 range. So you really want to take a look at that. And that is something that's functional medicine. That is to optimize the vitamin D in your body. Vitamin D is some scientists are actually seeing that now as a hormone, and they want to rename vitamin D to hormone D. It's a really, really important supplement to make sure to check your levels every year and to keep an eye on it. So that's general good health information for everybody. Now what I'll do is I'll go through the brain types, and there are 16 brain types, but actually there's 5 main brain types, and then the rest of the brain types, type 6 through 16, are actually a combination of 2 or 3 of the brain types that we're going to talk about. So I'm just going to talk about the first 5 brain types, and then you'll see how you'll see that information together. So the first brain type is the balanced brain type. And this type of brain, this type of person has flexibility, is able to adapt easily to things that are happening. They can stay focused. They have good impulse control. They have balanced emotions. They feel resilient. And so this type of brain, these types of people right now during the pandemic are not as thrown off as other people are, because their ability to just kind of go through and be like, okay, well, this is what's happening and this is what I'm going to do. And so their ability to handle changes and to be able to stay focused is relatively in balance. They will have their moments, of course, but that's just in general how they operate. So with this type of brain, the supplements are a general multivitamin, a pro-brain biotic, and a vitamin D, checking the vitamin D level. And so the exercise is still the same. For diets for the brain type, for the balanced brain type, is that they need a balance between protein and carbs. So, which is not how all the brain types operate well on. So they need a good balance between the two. And when they're doing carbohydrates, they want to make sure that they're low glycemic and high in fiber. So that is what's most important, because they want to help make sure that as they're eating carbohydrates, as with any brain type, anytime you eat carbohydrates, you want to make sure you don't have those blood sugar crashes or increases. So the second brain type is the impulsive. And this type of person tends to be spontaneous and risk-taking, creative, out-of-the-box thinker. They're restless. They need to be interested in order to be focused. And this type of person tends to be, they're the rock climbers. They're the ones that are jumping out of airplanes. They are in the racetrack and the auto racing, and they are just, they have to have excitement in order to stay engaged. And so for this brain type, what's really helpful, that can be helpful, their tendency is that their brain has a lowered amount of a neurotransmitter called dopamine. And so one of the supplements that he recommends is focus and energy. And you would think like, okay, this person sounds like they have a lot of energy, but they need to have it focused. And so that's what the focus and energy supplement does, is it helps to create dopamine in their brain, which helps their prefrontal cortex. So the impulsive person can have difficulty with the break in their brain, if you will. And what the dopamine does is help to give a little bit more of that break. So, you know, children's prefrontal cortex, the prefrontal cortex is in the front of the brain, and that's our executive manager. And that helps us to make judgments and decisions. And it's our stop sign. It's our break in the brain. And it's the last part of the brain to mature. And so it doesn't mature until actually age 30. And if somebody has a learning issue or a learning disability, it can actually be a little bit later than that. So think of children. right? They're ready to like climb on the roof and jump off the roof. And they don't have a brake system necessarily that tells them this could be dangerous. Let's think about what the consequences are. They don't have that capacity because that part of their brain has not been fully developed yet. And that's why parents have to be the brakes for those children because they don't have the brake system set up in their brain yet. So with the impulsive type, it's really important to keep them physically active to keep up with their mental activity. And they actually, you want to have more higher quality proteins than carbs. So what carbs will do for this type of brain is it will actually fog over the prefrontal cortex that is already having a hard time. So they need clean fuel in their brain. They need clean protein coming in to their brain in order to operate in balance. And when another supplement that Dr. Amen will talk about is something called Brain Boost on the Go. And that's a great thing to have. They're little, they're a box of like 10 powdered and you just pour it in water and it just helps you to both calm down and to focus. And that's a great supplement for anybody who's looking for those types of things that are needing some help that way. So that's your impulsive type. They're the exciting people to have in your life. And the overfocus type is the next brain type. This is type brain 3. And they are the persistent ones. They can be strong-willed and relentless. They're used to getting things a certain way. They can get stuck on thoughts. They can get stuck on old hurts. They may tend to see themselves or others. They'll see the things that are wrong in themselves or others. This part of the brain that gets stuck where this person is over focused tends to, if somebody says yes, that person will automatically say no. It's the automatic no person. So think about children. Their automatic no happens a lot. And as their brain matures, typically that will settle down. For this type of brain in an adult is we want to take a look supplement-wise at a serotonin type support. And that will help to soften that stuckness that, you know, that there's a really good thing when somebody is over focused and they are starting a business or they are trying to finish a project or they're building a house or something like that that requires stamina and it's not just a quick project. You want those over focused brains on your team during that type of project. But it can be challenging to live with somebody who has an over focused brain because they can get really stuck and it's got to look like this or it's not going to be right and then they worry. So serotonin can be really helpful for this. It does not have to come in a supplement form. It does. But one way to get serotonin into your brain, if you have an overfocused brain, is complex carbohydrates. So these people actually need higher complex carbohydrates and actually lower protein. So complex carbs, again, high in fiber, low glycemic. Saffron spice is really good for these people. And what I usually tell people, because I also see couples and we look at brain types, and if one person has an overfocused type of brain and the other person wants to have, say, a conversation about something that's difficult, I will suggest to the other partner, feed your partner some complex carbohydrate pasta or sweet potato, or give them some sort of complex carbohydrate, take a walk for 45 minutes, and then have the conversation, because that is going to bring serotonin to their brain. Cardiovascular is key for these people. Cardiovascular on a regular basis. When you do cardiovascular for a half an hour, And I'll tell you what the combination is for the cardiovascular. So you want to do 4 minutes of, I'll use walking as an example. You can use this on anything. You can use this in an elliptical, on a treadmill, any type of equipment. So you walk fast for 45 minutes, like you're running late to a meeting. So walk fast for 4 minutes, and then you'll run as fast as you can for 1 minute, and then you'll walk for 4 minutes as fast as you can, and then you'll sprint for 1 minute. Or if you're on a stair climber, you just go as fast as you can for a minute. But cardiovascular is key for these people. And so I usually recommend 30 minutes of that alternating 4-1, 4-1, 30 minutes 5 times a week at least, if not 7. So depending on how overfocused that person is. So, all right. So the next brain type is the sad brain type. And this person is very deeply feeling. They're highly sensitive to emotions. Their moods can go in and out, up and down. They're very empathetic. They understand what other people are feeling. Sometimes they carry other people's feelings without wanting to or needing to. They can tend to be pessimistic because not only are they feeling their feelings, but they're feeling other people's emotions around them. And if you have this type in your brain type, if it's sad or it's in one of the other combination types, it's really, really important to exercise, because at this point, for this brain type, one of the things that they recommend, and I really want to make sure you guys hear this, is SAMe is a supplement, SAME, and that is really helpful for people who have this brain type. However, this is a very large caveat. If there is any bipolar tendencies with the sadness, if there's big dips of sadness and then high dips or high kind of manic, not being able to sleep and that kind of thing. If you're going up and down, you do not under any circumstances want to take SAMe. So that is one caveat. These people do better on a balance of carbohydrates and clean protein. And for the anxious person, which is a brain type 5, they tend to be more prepared and cautious. They're motivated. They're reserved. They may have a busy mind and difficulty relaxing. So this part of the brain actually, it's called the basal ganglia, and it actually sets our idle in our body. And so the idle in a car, it's either, running pretty fast, or it's, running too slow. For this, the inside of their brain and their body runs a little fast. And so they tend to be anxious. And so they're motivated. They can get things done because they're anxious. If they don't get it done, that will be a problem. One of the things that can help with this brain type is GABA. And that is a really, and the everyday stress relief is a really great formula as well that Dr. Amen suggests. For these people, diet-wise, a balance between protein and carbs is really helpful. Complex carbs, always complex carbs. So those are the 5 brain types. And then after that, I'll give you an example. Like the 6th brain type is impulsive and overfocused. So it's a combination of the 2 brain types that I just talked about. And when you get your report, the suggestions will be a combination of those suggestions that I just went over of the 5 brain types. So those are the brain types. And then one other thing I just want to go over is you will also receive a chart on your report, And that tells you the brain health areas. It gives you an idea. And so it talks about sleep and memory and executive function and inner peace and mood and flexibility and thinking. And so take a look at that and see if there's anything in there that you are wanting to change as you try to figure out what it is that, what your goals are for this 21-day challenge. So.
Yeah, can you just read back those different brain health areas that you just said? Sleep.
Memory.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Executive function.
Mm-hmm.
Inner peace.
Mm-hmm.
Mood, and flexible thinking.
So some of those seem fairly self-explanatory, but can you talk a little bit about what help us understand executive function
Sure.
and also flexible thinking?
Absolutely. So executive function is the prefrontal cortex. So that's the last part of the brain to develop, to mature, about age 30. And that is the part of the brain that is our judgment. It is our decision maker. It helps us, it's our executive manager in our life. So it says, yes, do this, no, don't do this. It's the brake in the body. And so for people who, I think about this in terms of people who snap and kill another person. Their executive function is no longer working. They don't have a stop sign in their brain to say, this is a bad idea. There's going to be terrible consequences. There's going to be a human life at stake. There is no discussion in their executive function to handle that. So as we get older, what can happen is if we haven't exercised that part of our brain, just like we need to exercise our arms and our legs and our core and all different parts of our body, we need to be able to exercise different parts of our brain. And so executive function is like, things that can help that is new learning, learning 15 minutes a day, learning something new, making sure that you walk around your house in a different pattern than you normally do. It's really great to be able to always put your keys in the same place so that you can find them, but you have to challenge your brain every day throughout the day. Otherwise, it shuts off and more and more energy starts to decrease. So you want to make things difficult for yourself. Change your utensils in the kitchen to a different drawer. It'll take you probably about a month to start being able to get into a rhythm with that. Make your brain work. When you go outside, instead of turning right, turn left. When you get in the car, go a different pathway to go to your exercise class at HPA.
Great. Yes, definitely. Come to your class, but just make sure, you don't still get there on time.
There, right. Make sure you get enough time. And the flexibility in thinking. So that was part of the brain type 3 that gets over focused, is they tend to have rigidity. They cannot flow from either idea to idea, or they can't flow from action to action. So for example, if somebody came into this space right now and I turned to them and I tended to what they needed and I turned back and I was able to keep going, that means my flexibility and adaptability to environmental changes, my brain can continue. Mm-hmm. For somebody who's very over-focused, they would either only be able to do the recording, or they would only be able to tend to that person, and they would get really upset that things were going out of balance, that things were in complete chaos. So that person would have a really hard time being flexible enough to adapt to the situation. So if you've had a hard time through this coronavirus, and you're feeling really stuck and tense about things, you may want to take a look at some of the recommendations that I made for the brain type 3. Even if you don't have the brain type 3, some of those recommendations you can still do. So,
do you have a recommendation from outside of exercise and nutrition supplements for this brain, if this is a concern for you, flexible thinking, a behavioral practice. You gave some for executive functions like a new learning, putting the utensils in different place and
Right. So for that, I would say you want to do distraction. So if you're really hyper focused on something, you want to literally pick yourself up and move to a different place to be able to focus on something else. There's something called that Dr. Amen has on his website, or you can Google on YouTube, killing the ants. And the ants are automatic negative thoughts, ANTS, automatic negative thoughts. And the thought process is to help people who get really stuck and worried in their thoughts, to be able to work with them mentally and emotionally. I will say that the thing that can be challenging, if you have over focused in one of your, if it's brain type 3 or one of the other brain types, if it's like over focused sad or over focused anxious, it's not enough just to take care of the anxiety. You have to work with the over focused part, because the over focused part gets stuck on the anxiety. So working with a brain health coach can be really helpful, or a mental health professional, or a counselor can be really helpful on that. But if there's, if you've been treated for anxiety or treated for depression and nothing seems to work, and you got over focused in one of your descriptions, there's a possibility that over focused part in your brain has never been treated or tended to. So, which is a relief to know.
yeah, that's very interesting. I'm glad you pointed that out. Some people in my life, maybe me, come to mind. I'll not go down that rabbit hole right now. So I do have some questions. One is, so we've got these 5 kind of broad categories and then the subcategories. Is your brain type just is what it is? If you're a type 5, you're just a type 5, or maybe you're a type 5 and you make some changes and you move into another category. And then as a follow-up to that, is there a brain type that we should all be striving towards?
Good questions. So you can change your brain type. Typically, so the goal would be, or I think what most people would desire, depending, that's a broad statement, but I think most people most of the time would want a balanced brain type, would want the type 1, which I don't see a lot of. And you can change it. The thing that they have figured out, the mental health professionals have figured out, is typically some sort of conflict or trauma caused that part of the brain to work that way. So I can give you an example, and the reason that I became a brain health coach is my daughter at age 16 had a lot of learning disabilities, and her biological father died when she was 5 years old, and she had post-traumatic stress that was in her brain. And you can actually, on a brain scan, which was incredible to me, you can actually see the pattern. It's called a diamond pattern. And what it means is that there's 4 hyperactive areas in her brain, and there's 1 area that's not working very well at all. And so, all the Western medications, all the Western psychiatrists and tutors and teachers and counselors all wanted to put her on a stimulant. And there was something in my mama gut that said, no, I don't want to do that. And I couldn't figure out why. And when we got the brain scan, if we had done that, she actually would have gone into self-harm, because it would have stimulated those 4 hyperactive areas. And so as we have balanced out those 4 hyperactive areas, she has been able to, I mean, we didn't think she'd graduate high school. And she graduated high school. She's now in nursing school. She's on fire. She's completely different person, because we were able to balance her brain health. So brain health is so much more than personality. It's really it's so vital, I think, to all of us. And it's not been something that we've talked about. We've talked about, we get sex ed, we get education on nutrition, we get education on our bodies, but nobody talks about what is the health of our brain. Are we making good decisions? Are we able to remember things? Are we having good relationships? Are we, all of these things? And that all comes down to the brain. So.
Yeah, I remember seeing sometime in the past year being on Dr. Amen's website, and the initial video that just loaded and started playing right away. One of the first points he made was that I think he talked about it in light of the field of psychology being pretty much the only field of medicine where we're treating an organ essentially, or there's a dominant organ or primary organ for what we're treating in the human system that's not actually being studied, the organ itself.
Right.
And his work, and now other folks in the neuroscience
yeah.
field, which is still relatively new field as far as,
Absolutely.
Getting into the nitty gritty of it, right, is still very young. But that clicked with me. It just made so much sense that we need to study the brain and better understand how that organ functions and how it can get imbalanced, and be able to have some objective measurements for that, which the functional MRIs are one way that Dr. Amen and his colleagues are able to do that these days. But that really sunk in to me that we need to be studying the brain, and so the information that you're providing is based in large part on these objective scans and what changes they've seen in the brain health, areas being active and less active, and ideally having a good balance of key areas that are active and active versus underactive. So thank you for sharing your personal story about your daughter. And if I understand, I don't think you said this, but you've on this call, but you've told me in the past that her story and your experience with her and the transformation she experienced is what led you into this field yourself, right?
Absolutely. It changed, to say that it changed her. I mean, like the light went on, like the light had not been on since her dad had died. And I knew that, and I searched, and I was doing all these alternative treatments, and I could not find her. She was lost. And this turned her brain on, and she was all of a sudden able to engage in life. And it was a miracle for a mother to be able to witness such a transformation. And because of it, after about 6 months, when I knew like it was real and it was going to stay, like she was going to be able to maintain and keep doing better and better, I took a month off work and actually just delved into studying this. So it's been a fascinating journey, and one that I'm really passionate about, to get the information out to people, because the more that we can be aware, it doesn't only help us, like if we figure out kind of where our brain gets stuck, but then when we have a relationship of any kind and we can say, oh, wow, that person's brain is really stuck. And it's not that they're not wanting to do X, Y, Z. But if you see it from a brain perspective, it backs you up a little bit and gives you compassion and like, wow, their brain's really stuck on that, huh? Let's go get some complex carbs and take a walk for 45 minutes, and then we'll have a conversation.
Right. Yeah, I mean, in some ways, an analogy might be for, a shoulder that, I can't lift my arm up above a certain point without pain, try as I might. So then you get an image and you find out that you've got maybe some bone spurs and maybe some floating pieces of cartilage in there, and maybe you've got a partially torn rotator cuff, and then based on that, now you've got a plan, that can be put together. Maybe you need some physical therapy, maybe you need surgery, and any number of things to address the issue at that structural level.
Right.
We're talking
Right.
about structural, the brain as a structure that has different aspects to it that need support and can get stuck and can get immobilized, like a joint can get
Absolutely.
immobilized. Maybe you need to change your nutrition a bit for that shoulder because there's such systemic inflammation in your body and so much of it has gotten lodged. It's really created a chronic inflammatory cycle in the shoulder, and changing your diet will help you lift your arm higher. So I
Yeah.
think that to me sounds like a good analogy for what we're talking about with the brain, as far as understanding that there's kind of mechanics here that we're talking
Right.
about.
Mhm.
I,
And I will just say and interject, I think that's a great example. And what I would like to say is when somebody can't lift their arm, for example, and your expectation is for them to lift it, you cause your own self pain. So it's the same thing with the brain. Like if their brain literally can't process something, or if their idle is running so high, they're so anxious, and you're getting upset because they can't listen. If you know more about what's going on with your brain and what your expectation is and what's going on with their brain, it changes relationships
mhm.
because it changes your expectations. You would never have, the expectation for somebody to lift their arm if there was a torn rotator cuff. That would just be silly.
Right.
But we can see that, and so we're like, okay, we can understand that, but we can't see what's going on here. And so doing this brain health assessment, I think, is great for everybody.
Mhm.
I think kids, grandkids, aunts, uncles, like, take the assessment and look at it, analyze it, think about it, see what wants to be, what you want to change with it. But
Mhm.
the cool thing is you can address it from supplements, from exercise, from counseling, from diet. You can really go at it to help it rebalance in so many different ways. That's what brain health coaches do. Yeah.
um, for all of you who've gotten to this point in the video, thanks for watching. And what I'll do after I get off the call with Whitney is see if her and I can put together a little document that kind of summarizes particularly some of the recommendations. And then if we get that together, you can look below where this video is posted, and I'll put a link there for more information, so you can go back and identify your brain type and get some of this reminders about some of the different choices that you might make to change that or improve your brain health. And just in conclusion, Whitney, I want to, and you brought up the story about your daughter, and from the time she was 5 until the time she was 16, you knew something needed to be improved, that she wasn't, you said the light wasn't on, that's like a part of her wasn't there. And so to me, one of the if biggest takeaways from this call is just your story and her story as a reminder to never give up, to not give up. And I just see, so many clients come in our doors on a regular basis, and they're, in that second half of life, and they're dealing with this pain and that pain in their body, and they're somewhere on a spectrum of starting to give up hope, oftentimes, that it can get any better, and starting to become, if not already, somewhat resigned to, you know, I've this is the best it's going to be, and it's probably just going to go downhill from here. I'm just trying to hold on to what is right
Right.
now, and there's no sense of much brightness for their future. And the biggest difference between those folks that I see that have at some point have breakthroughs in their physical pain and mobility issues that they may come to us for, they just don't give up.
Right. Right.
Sometimes our services are able to provide a lot of their solution, maybe
Mhm.
all of it. Sometimes it's a part of the solution and gets them better, and then they need something else beyond that. But those folks that, whether it's with us or somewhere in the future, I find out had a breakthrough, it's because they were persistent and didn't become resigned to, it can't be any better. And so I think it's a great message for all of us, for our own lives and for the lives of those people that we love, that we're trying to support them in finding, whether it's for our own health or for the sake of somebody else. We're looking for a better solution than what's been found so far. If it relates to their brain, controls pretty much most functions in the body, or has a great influence. It's involved with every function in the body, if not
Yes.
in control of it. And so whether it's an emotional issue, a mental issue, a physical issue, there's a chance that brain health is a key component to it. So the more we can become educated and educate ourselves about this subject, the better chance we're going to have to live a healthier, more robust, vibrant life.
Absolutely. And I will say that the language of the body is pain. That's trying to get your attention that something needs to change the way that you've been doing it. And the language of the brain, if there's brain fog, if there's memory issues, we should actually not lose our memory as we age. That is not a normal aging
Wow.
process. That means that something is off balance that needs to be tended to. And so, absolutely, it's really figuring out what the language of your body is trying to tell you. Mm-hmm. And I think that's, you've got an amazing language for the physical body, and, there's so many things that can be done for mm-hmm. people. So never give up.
Well, on that note, thanks again for being with me here today. And I didn't say this before, but just want to, at the beginning, I said Whitney is the owner of BrainWise Acupuncturists, and what she does with that company is you provide education to acupuncturists and other healthcare professionals, correct, on how to integrate ancient wisdom, ancient practices like traditional Chinese medicine, or maybe more modern practices if you're working with someone who's more in the allopathic healthcare system, but how to integrate those with modern day neuroscience and brain health practices, right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That we can all be so that we can all be healthier and live in a more evolved, happier world.
Yes, quality of life. Yes, don't give it up on it. Absolutely.
So, all right, Whitney. Thanks again, and thanks to everybody who watched to this point in the video. And we look forward to working with you again soon.
All right, thank you.
Bye.